It is not yet, but it's saying now streaming. So we're going to assume we're live. It looks live. Welcome back to The Change Physician. I am Melissa Cady with my co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro. We're here on our Monday motivations. If you're seeing me on the Challenge Doctor, I am cross-posting from The Change Physician. And if you don't know what The Change Physician is, well, you can check out thechangephysician.com if you're a physician or what we like to say a physician ally and would like to be part of the community to learn the mindset skills and strategies to live a more fulfilling life or career. You can check that out there. We have plenty of podcast episodes. I think we're up to probably around 60, if I'm not mistaken, Kevin.
We are at 60, I do believe. Dr. Colin Zhu was 60.
Yeah. So you want to run that episode recap on what we got this past week?
Oh, 1 second. I'm still sharing to all this stuff.
Oh, good. Okay. You're doing all your technical.
Yeah. Share. Because Facebook is likes to not let you share stuff. Right. It's like, I never understood that. It's like in the old days of Facebook, you could, you posted something and whoever you were friends with would see it. And then if you had like a page, you could do it. And then whoever liked your page would tend to see it. But, they've really, over the last 3 or 4 years, they've throttled that down. So the only way that people can see you is to pay practically anyway, from page. So to make sure people can see what we're doing here, you got to share it all over the place. So
that's right. Well, we were just mentioning that episode 60 was our most recent release, and that's with Dr. Colin Zhu, who is referred to as the Chef Doc. You can find him on Instagram as well, but really great. In fact, on our Instagram page, we have one of the trailers. I think we had quite a few stockpiled from that interview, some great comments, suggestions, inspirational types of things that we released one of those trailers on Instagram, so you can check that out on the Change Physician. In fact, Instagram only lets you have a certain number of characters, so it's actually the Change PHYS if you're looking for our handle. Yes, everything else I can put the Change Physician on, but you have to truncate it for Instagram. Now, if there's some way past that to bypass that, somebody let me know, because I have not figured that one out. But we had also we have a host chat coming up on real life fitness. Be looking out for that on Thursday. But our prior week, we should probably make note that we did a little real life nutrition chat between the two of us and shared that on our podcast. And Dr. Michael Greger, we mentioned him before on our Monday Motivation that was coming up, and you got to take a listen to that interview. I mean, he's on a freaking treadmill, living it, breathing it, and eating it, as far as plants, very plant-based focus, but kind of blending in this inspiration for a healthy lifestyle and why it's so important, especially during a pandemic. So check out that episode. And I think that covers our last week and what's coming up this week.
I do believe you're correct. And I'm going to second that. That Dr. Grieger episode was awesome. He's a hoot, man. And he's a total machine, and he's got a great story. I mean, we talk about driven people, and we've talked to people who have really been driven financially, but he was driven by a mission of seeing his grandmother change. Mm-hmm. Someone who had a death sentence, basically told by her docs that she was going to die at age 65 in the mid 70s, did the Pritikin diet, which if you guys aren't aware of that, that's a really heavy plant-based, low fat diet thing. And it was associated with some really astounding change, and she got better. It's interesting about Pritikin. I'd have to look this up, but the first time I heard of Pritikin, this was before medical school. And the guy, so, you think about in the middle of the 70s where they didn't, they thought that heart disease was just this thing. There was really nothing you can do about it, and you just died. And when Pritikin started the diet, he's like, no, I think we can change this with diet. And he did, because he was symptom with heart disease himself. And when he died, he did it in such a way, this is like the rumor anyway, he did it in such a way that was sort of mysterious because he wanted them to autopsy his body. Specifically so they would look at his coronary arteries and discover that, lo and behold, his arterial disease had reversed. And, we talk about change all the time. That was in the freaking 70s, and we still can't wrap our hands around this stuff. We had, there's Pritikin, Dr. Grieger, who had these experiences with that, who went to medical school in the 90s. We had Caldwell Esselstyn and how, his studies, and we still can't get this stuff right.
Yeah. Well,
Not
it's because it's part of our choices and our habits, and it's insidious, and it takes time to develop in many cases. But reversal can be, it can be pretty astounding. Just not necessarily what you structurally see per se. I can't prove that, but just the way people feel, even blood sugar, all those things can be pretty radical and quick on those results. You know, this made me think of just this. Go on a little tangent here. Is that with all these things and the pandemic and disbelief and vaccines and people are anti this and that, and I feel like it's just worth commenting on that we have to be really careful when we dismiss medicine altogether, or when we dismiss um, just lifestyle things altogether. There's a time and a place for all those things to play into our overall health. And um, you know I've seen things, especially when it comes to, COVID. I've had people say, well, you know, you should use ozone for it. I'm like, okay, hold on. Prevention's really important, y'all. So why don't we prevent doing our basic strategies and our, you know, wearing masks, even if it's not 100% risk mitigation, it is decreasing risk. If you think of the air like an ocean of particles and you're breathing and it can transmit things. So I think it's really interesting how we can swing a little too far each way, and where we think medicine's going to fix everything. Well, no, hold on. There are things that are overly utilized, and there are important things that you can do for yourself that can maybe avoid even the medical system. And then, on the other way around, it's, some people go way on the other side where they completely, may have had a bad experience. I don't blame them, but at the same time, there are things that you have probably utilized and need or might need in the future. You don't want to completely shun the medical system, because there are things that can be of value depending on what the circumstances are. But that doesn't minimize the role we play in our own lifestyle and choices. So anyway, any comment about that?
No, I mean, I completely agree. You're looking, they talk about the pendulum swinger or whatever, but I think the danger though
Mm-hmm.
is that we should always going through a path of science and understanding. Like science can become a dogma, but the scientific method and critical thinking skills isn't that, right? So anytime we sort of put the golden calf on the pedestal and say, oh, science is the god. Well, it's not science is the god. It's the whole processes behind the scientific method that's important to understand. And all that comes down to critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're not going to go into a political rampage here about this, but what we have seen over the last certainly 10, 20 years is the slow shift away from critical thinking skills
Mm-hmm.
to this idea that somehow a belief is the same thing as a fact. And that is simply not true. And if you kind of look at it, beliefs are so important because they sort of guide our behavior, right? The belief kind of bridge and to your behavioral patterns is so tight, and it's important, and it helps us navigate the world and all sorts of stuff. But if you cling so tightly to a belief in the absence of fact, that's dangerous to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to be willing to at least challenge your belief systems and be able to really critical as this is what I believe, but is what I believe true? Why is it true? What are the facts before it? What are the countering sources around it? And I think, really looking at the science and the scientific method, what it tries to do is disprove a hypothesis. It's not bad science is trying to confirm a pre-existing belief. Good science is taking that belief and then challenging it and actively looking for other evidence that disproves that hypothesis, aka belief. And so we should, if I believe that masks don't work, then I should be actively looking for sources that support why masks work so that I can understand and see the whole picture. So I'm challenging that hypothesis, not confirming it, not preferentially looking for data that says, oh yeah, you're right, masks don't work, because that doesn't do anything to me. And it certainly doesn't allow me to grow. But anyway, that's a long and short of it. Basically, mask yourself, get the vaccine when it's available. It's freaking awesome. Like, I was reading about that particular vaccine, and based on what we know so far, it seems to be one of the most efficacious vaccines that has ever been used, with this 95% efficacy rate. And even if that falls a little bit, it's still going to be ahead of the most. The side effect profile, the most common one is what you would expect to see, meaning an activated immune system. I mean, I think about it, if you get the COVID vaccine, you're going to want to get some shakes and maybe some fevers, because it's going to tell you that it's doing its job. It's getting your immune system all engaged. But yeah, anyway,
especially the second time, because it's starting to recognize, hopefully, something that looks foreign, that it's ready to attack. I want to mention that I sometimes feel like, when it comes to challenging your beliefs, especially in this world of COVID, is that just because I think where a lot of people fall short is when they don't understand much medicine or science, and they've already been kind of, I don't want to just say brainwashed, but we all can be influenced. But if we've been influenced to believe something that's not based on science, and then someone tries to explain it, or you feel like, well, someone's saying I should check this out, but you feel overwhelmed because you don't get it, you don't understand the medical intricacies or maybe the language or whatnot, then sometimes I find that people they don't even try. Like they don't try to find a way to understand it. And so trying to find somebody that, is a reasonable person, that's not just being, banging you over the head to try to say, you should just know this, and instead of explaining it in a language that you understand. Like, I think that's an important part, is finding resources that are reliable, which is sometimes tough, but someone that has enough experience, as much as people have bashed Fauci and all these other people, they have decades of understanding of the nuances from a scientific standpoint. It might be reasonable to listen to the explanations to try to understand that side. Anyway, I thought it was worth bringing up, because it's people, like many people say, people die for their beliefs, and some people are all about just believing in something versus like really getting what science means. And not all science is bad, science, like you said, it's a scientific method. It's the critical thinking. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's the part. If we're just influenced and just believe what other people believe, then we're not thinking through it and understanding it. And so we're just another lemming following other lemmings off the cliff, and it may not serve you well. So, okay, I'll get off my little soapbox.
I think it's a good soapbox, because it just happens the book that I'm reading this week is called Brainwashing: The Science of Thought Control, by Kathleen.
I didn't even know that.
It's yeah, well, because we've seen a lot of this stuff, and it's been quite fascinating when you start again looking at how the brain works and how the brain makes sense of the world, and how people can exploit that. And it is, not having, it is much easier for someone to influence you what is true or not true if you don't actually have all the facts.
Yeah.
One of the problems that we're seeing now, though, is people are questioning facts, right? Yeah. So like Fauci, right? You can disagree with the approach, but just a second here. I got to text my son and make someone's ringing on the doorbell. Come on.
Hello, live audience.
I even know who it is. Open doors. I don't know why she's doing that instead of texting her brother. Anyway,
it's all good. This is real life, y'all.
But you're making people question authority figures, right? Yeah. You can question authority. I don't ever blindly accept someone's background just because they say they're the expert. But if they're the actual expert and they have their credentials behind it, you should probably at least evaluate what they're saying with a little more detail, rather than to blindly say it's not right. Or pick some weird person off the internet that put a YouTube video up and is talking about banishing demons because they're sprinkling ketchup on you, or some kooky thing like that.
Yeah. So. It is interesting, because some of the people that I've seen out there like dismiss science, this and that and whatnot. And I also know that there's other things that these particular people may have had diagnosis in themselves or their family members that only 100, 200 years ago, they would have said that you're a witch or that you're possessed by demons. And but yet your current or medical condition actually has a legitimate diagnosis. I'm not, I can give examples, but there are things that were not understood 200 years ago that we understand now and is well accepted at this point, and has never been at this point in the 2000s, in this 21st century, has not been said it's a hoax. But suddenly when there's something new, unfamiliar, you don't understand it. You know, even I was kind of hesitant to acknowledge that this is a concern when it first came out, until you start trending and following what's really happening. You know, it's the irony is astounding, that what has become normal and accepted is not questioned, just like wearing your seatbelt, or, you know, things like that are not sudden changes. But it's the new and the sudden and the novel that there's people that'll swing to the hoax idea, or, you know, cling to it tremendously. So anyway, it's really interesting. So you have to dig, you have to think. I think that's critical for many of us in this country, especially with so much social media influence.
No, absolutely. Totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, that's way off of Monday motivation.
It is. So I think we should swing right back around to your Monday motivation. How did you do? Well, let's remind the audience what you had to motivate.
Well, my major motivation was I was supposed to get a talk done, and I'm going to say that it is not done.
But you did some work.
Oh, I did a lot of work. But,
yeah, you've made progress. It's not about perfection, it's progress.
Progress, yeah. And I don't, people would say this is procrastination, but it's not necessarily procrastination. Is I get really uncomfortable trying to do stuff far in advance of a talk that I'm doing, because then I get worried that it's going to get stuck, and I know I'm going to change it at the last minute. So anyway, that is not done.
Okay.
The framework is significant. I'd say it's 80% plus done. I'm keeping it flexible because it's the second day of the summit that I'm doing, and I want to make sure I can incorporate some things
Tailor
in there.
it.
Tailor it, you know, to what I see coming in, and maybe answer some things. But it'll all go well. It'll be all fine. It always goes. It always works out. Always does at the end. So how about you?
Well, the two main things for me were to send an email out to my Pain Out Loud followers, and the other one was to my Challenge Doctor following. My Pain Out Loud is a much bigger one that I've accumulated over the years, and I decided on the Pain Out Loud to discontinue the app because it didn't make sense from a investment versus usage standpoint. Most people were using online access, and so I sent out an email. There was a little bit of sharing of similar stuff in my Challenge Doctor email. So if you're on my list on either one, you will be able to see what I sent for updates and what's going on. But I decided I will, and actually I just, thank God we got started later. Otherwise I'd say they both weren't done. but I got them literally right before we got started, I was able to get those done. So thanks to you and your motivation, it drove me to get it completed, to keep you happy with my accomplishments.
The external motivation of, oh my God, Kevin's going to say something.
Well, I need to do it for myself, but sometimes you can layer the external motivation with the intrinsic to, I think mainly for putting it on the calendar. Just
I would agree. I mean, intrinsic versus extrinsic, it's not necessarily that they're either or better or worse, although intrinsic from a standpoint of sustainability makes more sense. But I definitely need extrinsic motivators. That's what a deadline is. Yeah. Even if it's a set deadline, it's an extrinsic motivator. So
yeah, gotta love my Google Calendar. I just pop that in there.
Pop that in there. So all right, what are you motivated then to do this week?
Let's see, Kevin. I gotta think about this. Other than some things around the house, that there's always something. I actually didn't really. I was so proud of myself for getting it under the gun for the last week one. I actually have to think about this.
Well, you gotta be motivated to do something this week.
Oh, I am motivated.
Yeah.
I just don't. Oh, well, you know what? I'm excited about the Pain Summit, and I made a point to make sure I didn't schedule anything around that time, so I'll be able to attend that. So that's a big deal. And I want to take up my workouts a notch each day this week. How
There
about
you go.
that?
That's a good one. I was
I've
gonna
been
because I like that motivation because I'm coming to the end of my current cycle with my current workout, and I was like, oh, I'm already thinking about what the next month is, and so I'm motivated to again kind of move around that because either the middle of next week I should be starting a new workout for the next, it's either 4 or 6 weeks. I always do these things in blocks just to keep things going, but it'll be fun.
Good.
Yeah.
Well,
that's one thing. I think we talked about that in the real life fitness.
Yeah.
That's what's worked for me is, I have something and that's where the deadline comes in. I'm like, for this 4 weeks, this month, whatever, this is what I'm going to do. And then I'm only thinking about the last week. Do I have to actually think about what I'm going to do next? And then the rest of the time is just like, well, this is what you're going to do. You're going to do this. So it's kind of fun.
Well, I will add, you just made me think, because of the pain conference, I'm going to have my little takeaways. I'm going to have a few notes of my big picture takeaways, and I will utilize that for my next email to, whether it's Pain Out Loud or my Challenge Doctor crowd, or even for the Change Physician. It just depends what comes out of it.
Yeah, it should be interesting. Yeah, it should be pretty interesting to see what does come out of that. And for those of you who don't know, what we're talking about is the Oregon Pain Summit 2021, which will be taking place January 22nd and 23rd. It's a virtual conference. And if you've been into some pain, it's awesome. This is the 3rd year that's happening. Obviously, the 1st year virtual. We got some really good speakers. Someone I'm super excited to hear because you can never hear Lorimer Mosley speak about pain and not learn anything. And he will be the primary driver there. So it'll be awesome.
Yeah. Well, I sent the link on this particular post for signing up there. So if you are human, as in a human being, you really should attend this. I'm not joking. It's not that it's less than, less than 200, right?
Cheap, very inexpensive.
A day and a half. You don't have to travel anywhere. You don't have to stay anywhere. And I will tell you, and of course, our lovely Kevin is going to be presenting, and you're going to hear all of his depth of knowledge presented in a manner that is easy to digest and understand, and wonderful metaphors to help understand your own experiences with pain or other types of, not just pain. I think it applies to stress and
applies all over the place.
Yeah, but it's good stuff. So check it out. It's a half day. It's actually the second half of Friday. So if you're working Friday morning or something, then you can see what's going on there. I think we'll have access to recordings later too.
Yeah, I think the plan was like 30 days after they were going to have access to the recordings. So that's what they asked me if I would be willing to do, and I said, yeah, that's probably fine. So it's another good one because there was quite a few people who wanted to come but couldn't do it that particular time frame.
Yep. So you could spread it out and listen to it over a month if you wanted to, but absolutely worth it. So anyway, had to put a plug in. I don't get anything for that. I just think everyone that's involved in it is great. And this is the 3rd, correct? The third.
Yeah.
And I was at the second one with my husband, and it was just a lot of fun. And hopefully in the next year or two, we'll be able to be in person again, but take advantage of this online access. It's totally worth it. You want to take us out, Kevin?
Well, okay. I will take it out. I hope everybody here is motivated for your week. What are the things that you would like to accomplish? Why you want to accomplish them? Hopefully it's for yourself and for your own personal growth in many ways, shapes, or forms, so that you can design things and craft the life and profession and practice that you love. And I guess that's this for us. This is the Change Physician Podcast. I am Dr. Kevin Cuccaro with my co-host, Dr. Melissa Cady. And until next time, guys, stay well.
See ya.